Today on the podcast, we're talking about the fact that Elon Musk's xAI has just closed a $6 billion new round of funding for xAI and what they're actually planning on doing with that money. This is very interesting. We got the news from the U.S. Security Exchange Commissions, according to a filing, that they were able to raise $6 billion. Some people were speculating that it might be 4 or even 5 billion, and it seems like they've actually surpassed even that, which is interesting considering the fact that only people who invested in their last round were permitted to invest into this round. So who were they? What are they doing with the money? How much have they raised total? What's the state of xAI? Why is it worth, all of this money? We're going to be breaking down all of that on the podcast today. Before we get into the podcast, I wanted to say, if you've ever wanted to start your own podcast, whether that's to grow your personal brand or to grow your business, I know I'm definitely biased because you're sitting here listening to me on a podcast, but I believe that podcasting is one of the best ways to reach your audience without having to try to go viral on social media or something. It's really never been my cup of tea, but podcasting is a really straightforward way to get your message out across, to grow your business or anything else. And if you've ever wanted to grow your own podcast, I would love for you to take my podcast course. For Cyber Monday this week only, I have a 50% off coupon code for my course. It's in the description. It's all caps, one word, Black Friday. You can get the link and the code in the description. If you've ever wanted to start a podcast, my course covers everything I did in order to go from 0 to 4 million downloads on my podcasts, and how I get new guests, how I edit everything, the production, the posting, the scheduling, the marketing, everything goes into all that. So make sure to check it out with the Black Friday and Cyber Monday discount code. All right, let's get into the podcast. So investors in this new round of xAI's funding have really, what's interesting, each investor, I guess the minimum that was ever given was $77,000. So someone was able to get in at that, which is interesting according to the filing. Now, why would someone give $77,000? What's interesting here is only people that invested in the last round were permitted to invest in this round, and you can assume, like, theoretically they could do the same thing again in the future. So maybe someone was like, hey, look, like, we're not, we don't have a ton of cash, but we'll throw in like 77 grand just to like keep our spot for the next round. Anyways, that's kind of interesting. Overall, they had 97 people that participated in this. The Securities and Exchange Commission shows much of the numbers, but they don't say who's actually participating in this. But previously, the Wall Street Journal had reported that Valor Equity Partners, Sequoia Capital, and Andreessen Horowitz were all expected to contribute into this, along with the Qatar Investment Authority, which is Qatar's sovereign wealth fund. So you're having, of course, some of these really big players coming in, and you have to when you have a $6 billion round. It's interesting because like Anthropic went and grabbed $4 billion just recently from Amazon AWS, and that's all from one company, but that's very, very not standard or typical. And so in this case, they were able to raise $6 billion, and they did it from around 100 people. So this new cash they just raised brings everything total they've raised to about $12 billion. This is, adding to the $6 billion that they added just this spring. And CNBC reported that in November, xAI was looking for about a $50 billion valuation. So this is about double what it did 6 months ago, definitely growing very fast. And, some people are like, what's the justification for this? I think what's interesting in all of this is people that did invest into this round were given access to essentially people that invested into Elon Musk's Twitter round were given access to about 25% of xAI's shares they could invest and buy. So, him essentially trying to bail out some of the investors of Twitter, which obviously went down in valuation since his purchase. So, how, what's the plan here with xAI? How are they planning on ramping this thing up? What's going on? After the company released Grok, this is pretty much just their like ChatGPT competitor that's on X. It does a bunch of different things. Obviously it's a chatbot for premium users. I believe they're going to start bringing it to free users in some regions and probably testing that out, kind of how ChatGPT has their free tier as well. Grok has what Elon Musk has described as a, quote, a rebellious streak, right? So it's going to answer what he says are spicy questions that are rejected by most AI systems. It could be vulgar if you tell it to be vulgar, whatever, right? This is the thing that people talk about it. That was kind of like the marketing shtick for it. It's not politically correct, and it's free speech and that kind of stuff. It's also, quote, maximally truth-seeking. So, I mean, I can see like the appeal to a lot of this. Some people have tested it and said it's actually not much better in biases than like ChatGPT. So apparently, all these AI models trained off a lot of data, typically trained in San Francisco. They all have left-leaning biases politically, which makes sense because that's the people that are training them in the cities that they're being trained in. I think the goal is for it to be, non-biased, but we're seeing that currently. Over the last year, Grok increasingly got integrated into X. And what's interesting, though, is the developers that got this whole thing running, they made I believe, an open source edition of it originally. And anyways, there's a bunch of new things happening with it. So in any case, they also got Flux, which is an open source image generator, added to it. And because of that, it can generate images. And again, true to the chatbots idea, these images don't really have guardrails. So obviously illegal or super bad stuff is blocked. But you can make, a picture of Trump. I remember playing with it, and I had a picture of Trump driving a bus through a fire, and Kamala Harris parachuting out of a crashing airplane, holding a bag of money. You could, I was testing out how, if it really was gonna have guardrails on political stuff like OpenAI does. So I can also see some appeal to that, and they're able to do that because Flex is an open source model. So whatever guardrails they put on it is pretty much all it has. So what's interesting is it's been used a lot, aside from I guess these silly examples of no guardrail images or saying something vulgar if you wanted. I think the real use case that it's used for is summarizing news and trending events, because it's integrated into X, and it has essentially what everyone's saying, and it has all of these cutting edge news stories on there. I think that's the real use case that's actually useful with Grok. In any case, a bunch of people have reported that Grok might even start to handle more functions over xAI in the future, like their search capabilities, right? You see these AI models are really great at search capabilities, and, helping people do their account bios and their analytics and some of their reply settings, a bunch of different stuff. I think you can imagine it could get, embedded in there. Maybe you have it set up to auto reply or talk to people based off of messages. So there's a lot of interesting stuff I think that it can do. It's definitely trying to play catch up, right? We have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, and they're trying to catch up to them. They did just launch an API in October, which is awesome. It's very similar to OpenAI's. You just change one line of code, and if you had OpenAI integrated into your software with their API, I was able to get Grok on my new software for AI Box very quickly because of that. So that made it quite easy, which essentially allows third-party developers like myself to build apps. All these platforms can integrate it. So I think that's definitely a smart move on their part. According to the Wall Street Journal, they're preparing to release their very own app, just a standalone kind of app for consumers, similar to ChatGPT, in December. So this month it should be coming out, which will be very interesting. Now, at the same time, there's been a lot of drama with it. Elon Musk obviously is in the process of suing OpenAI because he was an early investor, and we all know the drama there, right? What's interesting that I found here is that apparently Elon Musk says that OpenAI has been quote, actively trying to eliminate competitors like xAI, for example, by, quote, extracting promises from investors not to fund them. So this is actually something that OpenAI did. They said you can invest in our latest rounds when they were raising money, but they were trying to get people to promise you won't invest in any other AI companies like Anthropic or xAI. So according to Elon Musk, his counsel says that is unfair, and that they're also unfairly benefiting from Microsoft's infrastructure, which pretty much is a de facto merger. Microsoft bought 50% of the company, so you could say that's pretty much a merger. OpenAI is pretty much Microsoft, but sort of different. There's all that drama too. So even with all of this, allegedly xAI's data gives, or X's data, Twitter, formerly Twitter's data, gives xAI a leg up compared to some of its rivals with, I think, kind of the cutting edge news and what people are saying about it stuff. Last month, X actually changed its privacy policy to allow third parties, including xAI, to train models on the post. So that's very interesting. And that doesn't mean that I think the whole world can. I think that means that anyone that's approved. So obviously, they're going to approve xAI to do that. And that's a massive data set that they can use that they could, essentially exclude others from using. So that is definitely something very valuable. And that's sort of why you start seeing this connection between X and xAI, where people that wanted to invest in X xAI, if they were a previous Twitter investor, got like access to 25% of the company. So very, very interesting. Okay. What is happening with the whole ecosystem? How are they running this? What's going on with the hardware? How are they training these models? What's going on there? This is very interesting because we had, Sam Altman recently saying he was concerned that xAI was going to get access to more compute than them, yada, yada. What's going on? So essentially, they've outlined their vision, I think, as far as where they're planning on growing, where xAI actually might be, training on data from a bunch of different companies owned by Elon Musk, including Tesla and SpaceX, and their models could then improve a lot of the companies or a lot of the technology that are actually embedded into Tesla, SpaceX, and others. So it's almost like instead of having AI departments in these companies, they're just kind of outsourcing it to xAI and then just reselling it back to them. Which, I mean, it's got its pros and cons. It's like an AI focused company, so you can imagine how that'd be easier to get, really cracked AI developers in there if they didn't want to be like, stuck in a big organization. But at the same time, some people are suing. Tesla shareholders are suing Musk because they say that essentially he's, starting this new company that's just going to divert talent and resources from Tesla, and then it's going to essentially become a competing venture or, something that's going to cost them money. So there's some lawsuits going on there with that. What I will say is that according to the Wall Street Journal, xAI is supposed to be in talks with Tesla to essentially provide research and development in exchange for some of the car makers' revenue. So that is very interesting as well. And I'm sure that previous lawsuit I mentioned gets into that. Regardless of all of that, I think their developer and consumer-facing products only make about $100 million a year right now, which sounds great. But if you're looking at comparisons, Anthropic is apparently on pace to make about $1 billion this year. OpenAI is targeting $4 billion by the end of the year. So, a tenth of Anthropic, it's still relatively small how much money xAI is making. And I think there's definitely a lot of room to grow. I'm actually surprised that they even have that much money because I'm not sure how they segment out like, you essentially get it for free if you have X Pro or Premium or whatever. And so I'm not sure how they segment it out to say like it made money versus just X made money. So yeah, I'm not sure how that works, but once they make their new standalone app for consumers, it's going to be a lot easier. And I think they'll be able to grow a lot, assuming the quality is fairly decent. So something that I found absolutely fascinating is how they are training this model. This summer, xAI started training some of their newest Grok models over in Memphis, Tennessee, in a data center. Memphis is, not typically known for data centers. I mean, I don't hear about them very often there, but apparently they were able to build this one in 122 days. They put up a data center very quickly. It's currently powered partly by portable diesel generators. So you can imagine this thing just came online super fast. And that essentially fixes the bottleneck that a lot of these data centers are having, which they're not able to get enough power from the grid in the cities that they're in. So they're hoping to upgrade their server farm, which has about 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs next year, because right now they're really kind of limited by not having more than that. In November, they did win approvals from the Regional Power Authority of Memphis for 150 megawatts of additional power. So that's about that's about the same amount of power that powers about 100,000 homes. So they're going to be able to get that and hopefully switch off their diesel generators. But in order to do that, they had to promise to improve the city's drinking water, and they had to, I think, give the Memphis power grid a bunch of Tesla manufactured batteries at a discount. So you can see how Tesla's kind of benefiting them. Their benefit, like it's Elon Musk's companies, or it seems like they're all kind of like working together. But some people are criticizing that because they say it's going to be a straight on the power grid. So, there's pros and cons that people are talking about. I think right now, from an operational standpoint, xAI is growing really quickly. They had about a dozen employees in March of just last year, and now they have over 100. In October, they moved into, it was actually the same old corporate office that OpenAI had in San Francisco in the Mission neighborhood. So OpenAI moved into there, and some people said or xAI moved into there. Some people were saying that was more symbolic. They apparently had told some investors that they plan to raise more money next year. So the $6 billion we're seeing, a potential $50 billion valuation, probably is not the end of it. It's not going to be obviously the only company raising insane amounts of money. We all saw that Amazon was able to pull in $4 billion from or Anthropic was able to pull in $4 billion from Amazon. So it has raised a total of $13 billion. And then OpenAI recently raised $6.6 billion in October. So it's raised $17 billion. But honestly, this is absolutely fascinating to me. OpenAI seemed like the far ahead leader. But, we have OpenAI having raised about $18 billion. Anthropic has now raised about almost $14 billion. And then here we have xAI coming in with $12 billion. Like xAI has become one of the top AI companies, and they're just moving very, very fast. So this is going to be really interesting. Some of these mega deals have driven the AI venture capital activity to about $31 billion across 2,000 deals in Q3 of 2024, according to PitchBook data. So this is fascinating. We're seeing some massive growth. I'll keep you up to date on everything else happening with xAI. And if you enjoyed the episode today, if you wouldn't mind leaving me a review, it would be super, super appreciated. And also, if you've ever wanted to start your own podcast, make sure to get the coupon code, the discount in the description for this week only for Cyber Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.